Good evening and welcome, everyone. I know we're still waiting for some people to come in and find their seats. I just want to say thank you all for being here. Our students have worked hard all year and they're excited. Mr. Woodfield is going to come up and pray for us, and then we'll get started.
How you feeling? Rhetorical. No pun intended. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you for this evening. I thank you for the work that these four seniors have put in over the course of this year. I pray that you would calm any nerves that they might have. I pray that you'd give them clarity in their speaking, clarity in their thoughts when they're asked questions, and Lord, that they would just represent what they've learned over the course of this year. Thank you for Juliet and just the time that she spent committing to them and helping them through this process. Thank you for the people that have chosen to agree to be on a panel. I just pray that you'd guide their questions as well. Pray for anybody else that's on the road. You'd keep them safe, and I pray that you just guide this evening. In your name, amen.
Our first speaker tonight is Johan. He's going to be talking about electric versus combustion engines. And on his panel, we have Mitch Ocker, Keith Bikeman, and Dan McGrail. If you all want to come on up and sit up here with Johan.
Technology will get more and more advanced every single time. Better, faster, and easier to access each time. Throughout this, we can see for planes, just like the Wright brothers plane and the Boeing 700. Like now with the Boeing 777X, we can carry over 400 people from across the country, and the Wright brothers plane used to only carry 2 persons at a time. We also see this with our phones, like phones, laptops, computers. They used to be as big as a brick, but now you can just stick them in your pocket and carry them everywhere. And computers also, they used to be as big as a room, and that is crazy to imagine now because we can just put them in our cases and just carry them everywhere we want to. It's also the same thing with cars. We see this with the new BMWs that you can talk to Siri and ask you questions and just like that. We also see it with the most futuristic car out there, the Mercedes-Benz Vision AVTR, which is the Avatar it was a collaboration between the Avatar filmmaker and Mercedes, compared to the older models when you used to have bicycle tires, no roof or doors or anything. But today's competition is between electric vehicles and international combustion engine cars becoming increasingly prominent. We see the first electric vehicle ever created by William Morrison, 1890 for 1891. They had to discontinue it because it's cheap parts and it wasn't really working that well because they didn't have the technology as we do this time. Then we see Tesla. After 20 years being in the market and manufacturing these cars, they made the first truck called the Cybertruck, one of the best known these days. Then we also go with the history of combustion cars with Carl Benz in 1885 through 1886 with the Benz Panet motor wagon. Then the first American car ever created, the Model T, by the Henry Ford in 1906. Then every single company has to have their own competition. The Dutch brothers came in with the Model 30, 1914. Then Chevrolet decided to enter in 1931 with the AE Independent 6, the first truck to outsell Ford for the first time. But after 20 years, companies needed to buy something that attracted people. The first American sports car, 1953, with the Corvette Roadster. Then we have one of the best eras in muscle cars, the 1970 Dodge Challenger, the 1964 Ford Mustang, and the 1966 Chevrolet Camaro. According to Rob, this was one of the best muscle cars eras. We use combustion engines in vehicles, everyday driving, for towing, drag racing, normal racing, and other significant applications in our lives. While electric vehicles are considered the future transportation, significant concerns remain about their rel- re- reliability, cost, safety, and environmental impact, making combustion engines vehicles more suitable today in the world. Electric cars are not suitable for this era. People claim too much, that there's too much pollution in their world, that we need something to reduce this, and that's with electric vehicles, since they don't have an exhaust where all the gases come up from. And Elon Musk once they quoted, "I think there's more politicians in favor of electric cars than against. Some are still against it, and I think they just don't believe in climate change and they think it will last forever." Yeah, like people believe there's no gases come out of electric engines because there's no exhaust coming out. And a lot of people also say gasoline cars are also outdated and the electric cars are the future. A bunch of states in our world already passed a law that the most combustion cars will be out of here in 2035. And Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "The future is electric." But do we know how electricity is made? Electricity, there's a bunch of options to make electricity. It's by generating electricity in fuel burning, such as coal, natural gas, or oil, which is used to heat up water. About 60% of electricity is generated from fossil fuels, coal, natural gas, petroleum, and other gases. About 19 was from nuclear energy, and about 21 was from renewable energy sources. Our lack of understanding how electricity is generated is kind of numb, because I didn't even know how electricity was made until I decided to make this presentation. And it's kind of crazy how much also we use gases to make electricity. And it's also almost as bad as combustion cars for our world. We also see the power grids. They're generated by power plants, the nuclear, coal, and solar and wind and hydropower. Electric cars are becoming increasingly more advanced, like Tesla. They were started in 2003, but didn't become as famous until Elon Musk came in 2004. And they made one of the most famous trucks out there, the Cybertruck, also called it the fridge with wheels. And they developed muscle cars, sports cars, trucks, and daily cars into electric, just like one of the most famous ones, the Dodge Challenger. After being one of the most iconic muscle cars for 50 years, in 2025, they changed it into electric. We also see Porsche making this big transition with the Porsche Taycan in 2019, fully electric, but they're also planning by 2030 have most of their cars electric by now. But these electric vehicles are required of updates and repairs of mechanical issues. Like we see a lot of people on TikTok posting videos of how they're like getting locked in their car, how their cars are having updates issues. It's the same way as your phone. Once your phone's having an update, you can't do anything with it until it finishes updating. You can't turn it on or do anything. You just stay there until like it finishes. Another issue with this is electric cars and their batteries. James May said, "Electric cars have been environmental band-aid, not a long-term solution. The current footprints of manufacturing the batteries makes them questionable, especially when they look at the resources required of mass production. If your electric car's battery fails, it can cost up to $3,000 up to $20,000. A EV battery, you have to take care of it like yourself, like a human. They can be around 7 degrees Fahrenheit and they can be all natural. But in extreme weathers, they tend to like have problems after a while. The lithium batteries is a hard DEV. It can be sourced and concerns. Issues can include the battery carbon fiber footprints during manufacturing and disposal at the end of its life." Climate activist Greta Thunberg said, "Electric cars are not the answer to the climate crisis. They're a small part of the solution, but the focus should be reducing consumption and changing how we live." Green Care website says, we have to mine for these lithium. We have to mine for the lithium for this. And it's found only in Chile, Bolivia, Argentina, which is also called the lithium triangle. Lithium extraction can take up to 18 months through an evaporation process that uses enormous amounts of water. Each ton of refined lithium uses up to 500,000 tons of water. The International Energy Agency also tells us an electric vehicle requires 6 times the material inputs of a gasoline-powered vehicle. EVs, lithium batteries, are made from materials that are so expensive and in cases, toxic, flammable primary materials include lithium, nickel, cobalt, copper. Mining these rare materials manufacture, process, and eventually dispose real environmental challenges. We also have biggest mechanical problems with these electric cars. Their inflated system and the electrical. EVs are packed with advanced technology. Issues can arise with sulfur bugs and system malfunction or exposure to moisture and extreme temperatures. These can be seen as unresponsive controls, connective issues, and inconsistent system performance. EVs also rely on their own heating, rather than gasoline engines, reducible heat. We're also not that familiar with all of this technology in them, and a lot of mechanics can't work on them because you need certain knowledge of how to work on this. We also see this with one of my favorite series in Netflix called Car Masters to Rush to Riches. They had to work on this smart car to make it to go off-road. But once they were working on it and they finished it to put it all together, they found out it didn't want to turn on. The battery was right, all the engine was right, but it turns out it just was a simple connection they missed. But this happened throughout the whole entire video, the whole entire episode, them trying to find this out. They also got a Tesla, but since they didn't want to deal with all the same things with Tesla, they put a whole V8 engine in the blower. We also have a lack of mechanics for electric cars, lacking the trainings for fixing electric cars. EVs contain highly specialized systems that require unique expertise to repair and maintain such as voltage, battery systems, electric motors, powers, electronics, and regenerative braking system. Automotive News said, companies like Tesla, while leading the EV adaptations, have found it difficult to keep up with the demand and technicians trained specifically to handle unique needs of Tesla cars. Many mechanics are missing these tools for electric cars, and they're also pretty rare to find because only, like we saw with Tesla, you need to only Tesla has those specific materials tools to work on those cars. In 2021, a study by J.D. Power found that there were enough qualified technicians for EV maintenance, nothing that only just over half an auto service center in the U.S. had required capabilities to require electric vehicles. But with all of this, we also see why electric cars are not as safe as gas cars. Like one of the most recent examples is the Cybertruck that exploded in front of the Trump Towers. It wasn't the Cybertruck's fault, but it was the Cybertruck's fault when it was double the time it took him to take the fire out because of its lithium battery, which it kept going and going. And because of it, it was so flammable and didn't help him at all. In 2017, we see another report by National Fire Protection Association pointed out that EVs fires can be harder to extinguish due to its complexity and battery pack. One way it can be dangerous for electric shocks because their high voltage and the electrical system they have in. Also, another model we can see is Tesla Model S catching on fire after it crashed in 2013, leading to subsequent concerns about risk of electrocutions for the first responders. With studies, we also see another studies from the Euro NCAP indicated that some EVs perform similar or worse than traditional cars in certain crash scenarios. The weight can be given to advantage in side impacts, crashes and greater cause damage in the rear and front crashes due to its mass. We see another issue with these EVs. It's how much battery you can fill up with them and how much range you can take, because charging your EV can take from 30 minutes to an hour to just fill up to just have a fully charged battery, and can only give you from 400 miles or 300 miles, which we can see with normal combustion cars can give you you can charge it in 5 minutes, less like that. And there's more where you can fill up your combustion cars than electric cars these days. We can also see their towing capacity. With a Ram 1500, Ford F-150, and the Chevrolet 1500 can tow over 10,000 pounds. This shows us with one of the famous YouTubers, Whistle and Diesel. One thing that Tesla have to work is their Cybertruck towing hitch that just broke off because it fell into like a cylinder block and just snapped just like that. So he made a whole different video how a Ford F-150 can hold it. He dropped cylinder blocks and nothing happened to it. It just stood there like it should be and not breaking. We also see how we also have diesel powertrains that can take tons and tons of weight with them. But another thing is the hybrids are becoming increasingly popular and alternative to both combustion electric vehicles these days are offered of various companies. The first hybrid ever created was the Toyota Prius in Japan, 1997. Then the first time introduced in America was in 1999 by Honda. Then we see but supposedly the first hybrid car was in the 1900s by Ferdinand Porsche. And with this, we see how hybrid cars are becoming more and more famous, just like one of the latest ones, the Lamborghini Revuelto, and its competitor, the Ferrari SF90. Another competitor is the Porsche Panamera, and one of the most legendary ones is the F1 out there, which has a 1.6 liter turbocharged V6 hybrid engine that can make up to 1,000 horsepower. They have a very good fast acceleration, the fuel economy, the lower fuel consumption, and but with this, we see how hybrid cars tend to be expensive in traditional gasoline counterparts. With their internal combustion engine and their electric motor, owning a hybrid has drawbacks because they're dealing with maintenance of two engines, one electric and one combustion one. Like the electric one, you have two hybrid cars' battery requires of rare earth metals like lithium, cobalt, and nickel. And there's also two types of hybrids. One's like a Ford Fusion that charges every time you press on when you're using the combustion engine. The battery charges with that. But there's also different types of hybrids that you have to manually charge that battery, just like a normal EV would do. Hybrids can shine for driving cities like electric motors take over lower speeds, but when you go into higher speeds, the combustion engine will take over and will give you less consumption fuel. But cars have come a long way, from the first model with no roof and bicycle tires into the most futuristic car out there with the Mercedes-Benz Vision AVTR. This shows us how much car design technology have changed over time. However, while electric vehicles are often seen to the next big step, they may not be the right fit for our current time. The claim that electric cars do not release any gases into the environment overlooks the environmental concerns associated with the production of electricity, the power of vehicles and batteries. Electric vehicles often require updates to repair with mechanical issues. They're also packed with advanced technology, and issues can arise with sulfur bags, system malfunction, exposure to moisture, and extreme temperature. Electric cars are also not safe as combustion cars. The question of hybrid cars, that, as they seem to claim, contain both benefits and drawbacks of electric cars, leaves back with uncertainty. If EVs can truly solve the problem they claim to fix, then hybrids offer a temporary compromise rather than real progress. Are we really creating something better for our world, or are we just trading one problem for another? This is an important consideration for the future. Thank you.
Job, Johan. Okay, now we're going to have some questions from our panel. Mr. Ocker, are you okay to start?
So with the push for and growing prevalence of EVs, do you see an energy source that could accommodate the increase in power usage, making them a more feasible option moving forward?
Can you repeat that again, please?
With the push for and growing prevalence of EVs, do you see an energy source that could accommodate the increase in power usage, making them a more feasible option in the future?
Can you, what's feasible? I'm sorry.
Feasible to make an energy source that is going to be sufficient to power the increased demand of the EVs moving forward.
Well, they can get later on better, but right now we can see that they're, what's it called? Since they're barely starting, there can be a bunch of problems, but they could get better throughout time. Just like the Bible says, technology is gonna increase better and better each time. But they're not suitable for this era yet, as long as they keep moving forward.
Like as far as so you're talking about electrical production? Would one of those, do you see one of those being more suitable? Since the push is for environmental cleanliness, do you see one of those options that could generate the power requirements in an environmentally sustainable way?
Right now, I haven't seen any yet, but probably later on, but I'm not sure, right?
Okay. Secondly, in your research, did you happen to come across any concerns regarding the existing power grid and what the increased strain of the EVs, what effect that could have on the infrastructure?
On the instruction of the car?
The power grid infrastructure, as far as the delivery mechanism for charging the cars.
On the, what's it called, how it can damage the environment types?
More along the lines of like the power grid that's serving the charging stations and things like that.
What problems?
Johan, does it seem like the current systems we have in place for power can handle charging all we have and also charging electric vehicles? Did you read anything about that?
I didn't read any about that, but we can see like a lot that went in, what's it called, in California a few months ago, that they tried to like only have electric cars. It turns out that they didn't have enough electricity to power all of those cars, so they had to take the law out again.
Let's hand the mic to Mr. Weber. We'll come back if we have time.
Johan, you chose a very difficult topic. Pardon me. We have to look at economics, what's cheapest to drive. This is also a political posture. Some are totally for them, some are totally against them, and obviously there are environmental concerns. I was especially pleased with how aggressively you addressed the conflicts that some people say there's nothing that comes out of the tailpipe, and you disputed that the power has to come from somewhere. This is a question that's a very personal question towards you, Johan. Is there a list of things that you would say, all these things have to happen before I would personally consider an electric vehicle?
One thing I will consider for sure, that after I did this investigation, to like actually like not use gases like they claim to make, and like not had like the commercials like there are no gases produced and stuff like that. Another thing could be that there will be like more mechanics out there to like fix your car just in case it breaks down. Like they should like also have more of that, and I think that's about it. And they're like also like towing, what's it called? Their towing mechanism too. That they also have like bigger trucks.
Johan, that was directed just towards you. And I know that you're not afraid of mechanical things. You work with your hands, you're a troubleshooter. Would you say that the general public would have different concerns than you would have before they would buy an e-vehicle?
Probably more like where you can charge your car, like different places like in Mexico. There are not as many places like there are here. Probably that's one of the concerns. Also, one of the concerns how much time it will take to charge it, and just like a normal phone, your battery will like go lower as colder temperatures like we live here. Will drop down faster, and I think.
Last question for just a moment, Johan. We live in an environment that's cold most of the year, and you spoke very clearly about EVs losing a lot of capacity from their battery as the temperature lowers, and the additional energy that's needed to keep a car warm that has to come from a battery. Do you see Grand County as being one of the last places to ever use EVs?
Yeah.
That was a simple answer. Thank you.
Well, now the hard part's over there, Johan. Thank you. You did a wonderful job, especially reading through your presentation. I was really impressed. Thank you for choosing a topic that, first of all, would allow me to wear a car shirt to church. I haven't been able to do that yet, so thank you very much for that. I'm with you on the aspect of repairs, cost of repairs, how to repair. I was raised in a body shop, and my concern is the same as yours, is that it's quite possible that there won't be an infrastructure in place or a way to repair as many EVs as will be out on the road with a short amount of time. Is there an indication that the tools that are necessary are keeping up with the technology? Are they coming out with the things that'll make it easier for that next generation coming up to be able to, with confidence, go into that industry and say, yeah, I can do this? Do you see any indication of that?
Specifically with Tesla, there wasn't any, because they kept the tools by themselves. You have to send it specifically to Tesla because they're the only ones that know how to make it. There was an article I was reading the other day. Let me see if I can find it. That was one of the quotes I gave you guys to from the newest automobile. That not many people knew how to fix a Tesla. You had to personally just take it to Tesla.
Yep, I believe they call that proprietary is the word you would use for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's happening in our world all around us. It's not just with electric vehicles. It's even your standard automotive, Ford and Chevy, they're doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Always a new tool to have to buy, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to let these guys ask another question, and I'll get back to you.
Johan, this is a physics teacher speaking right now. And in your paper, you briefly mentioned that e-vehicles, because of the battery weight, means that the car is going to be heavier. And if the car is heavier, if you hit something, you're likely to be safer, because if you hit a smaller car, the smaller car is going to get hurt, and you're going to be safe. Do you have any sense, as you did all your research, that a person driving a heavier vehicle would be a little on the selfish side, thinking if somebody's going to get hurt, it's going to be somebody else? That was a loaded question.
Probably, because in my mind, if I crash into with my truck into someone doesn't have engine in the front, they're probably gonna have more damage than I will, in my mind. Because I have some experience in some cases. Short words like that.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
if I can ask you a little bit more lighthearted question. Being that I assume you're into a little bit more of the performance aspect of vehicles, and given that it was an electric Porsche that won the Pikes Peak, was it a couple years ago? Have you had the opportunity to ride in an EV?
I never got to ride an AV, to be honest. Like, none of my friends had one.
I know a guy with one. I'll see if I can schedule something. One last thing. I want to know, in all the things that you looked into to get your thesis prepared, was there ever a moment that it just led you to the wonder and the awe of what God has done? Did you ever think about just the way he built this planet to support what it is we're doing? Has it increased your ability to maybe bring some of these things into a conversation with a non-believer to where you can use what you now understand with vehicles as a platform to your Christian walk and sharing with others?
One thing for sure I can see, like, we see how, like, God created a bunch of different, like, materials. I never knew, like, lithium existed, or, like, a bunch of, like, lithium, cobalt. And so I made this investigation down, or nickel, on how, how God gave us the opportunity of, like, use a bunch of things and make with our own hands different things, like, to ride and stuff like that. And yeah.
We have time for one more question each, if it's a short-ish question.
Should be. So you mentioned the ability to recycle portions of the hybrid batteries. Is there any option for recycling the lithium-ion batteries that they use in the EVs?
You can, like, fix it, but they tend to, like, you have to, like, normally have to buy one, which it will cost you, like, a lot more money, in my opinion. But recycling, I actually didn't go really into that deep in my research, to be honest to you guys. So I actually have no idea.
Johan, this is not a fair question. It's best just to say it like that. Your discussion focused entirely on conventional lithium batteries, which are the only batteries that are used in electric vehicles. And just on the horizon and in the experimental phases are fuel cells that use hydrogen and oxygen. And those fuel cells would be very efficient producing electricity. And the advantage is you don't have the dangers of the lithium. Have you investigated anything past the present technology of lithium batteries?
I haven't, like, investigated, like, past the lithium battery. That's the most I investigated because that's, like, what they use now with the electric vehicles.
That's very appropriate because that's all we have right now. Thank you.
Okay. You spent a lot of time trying to distinguish the difference between reality and what is sold as truth with an electric vehicle. They want to pretend that it doesn't cause any emissions to make the electricity. So if you break down what it takes to make the electricity, store it, get it to the vehicle, and then use it at the vehicle versus internal combustion where you're producing the oil to gasoline, getting it to a service station, then to use it in the vehicle, and then there is emissions. Is there a clear picture of where each side stands? Are they closer in emissions than you would think by the commercials, or is it really closer to what they say, that EVs are just that much cleaner to have?
In a way, I say they're like EVs are what's called, while making them, you use a lot more emission into gases. That's why I searched up into one of my website that while making an EV, takes us more gases and more, what's it called? It runs the air faster than the normal combustion vehicle while making them. And yeah, I'm not Franco. I think that's about it. Yeah.
Johan, I don't believe that Formula One had 1,000 horsepower. Do you think you can set something up to where I can test drive that?
I want to test drive one too, but I don't think they'll let me.
Let's see what we can do. Thank you.
Well done, Johan.
Thank you.
Good job, sir.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you for coming.
Good job, Johan. We're going to trade out the mic. Our next presentation will be Sasha, and she is going to talk about how social media has contributed to and perpetuated an identity crisis. On her panel, we have Mr. Garlow, Miss Panav, and Mrs. Dugweiler.
Aspirations into expectations, making imitation feel like a necessary rite of passage. What is an identity crisis, and why does it matter? An identity crisis is a period of confusion and doubt surrounding oneself. It often occurs during transition or when someone is forced to confront aspects of their life that conflict with the roles they have taken on. It's like changing your entire Spotify aesthetic from indie sad girl to 2000 country and pop punk and thinking, you know, maybe this is really who I am right now. The concept of identity crisis was recognized by Erik Erikson in the mid-20th century. It was developed through his theory of psychosocial development, where he identified a specific stage in adolescence where individuals grapple with questions about their self-image, roles, and place in society. Essentially asking, who am I? You might respond with your name, age, and if you're feeling creative, maybe even your favorite color. But that's not an identity. An identity falls on a deeper level, a level that not only attracts, but detracts. Influencers have a huge impact on who we think we should be from a social media's perspective. To be accepted, one must mirror the lives and choices of those who are deemed successful. The products and lifestyles showcased by influencers and public figures on social media platforms become symbols of success, attractiveness, and social status. The Kardashian sisters are selling this new makeup line, and at this point, it's a need, a want, and a have to. Like, without this, I don't even know who I am. This generation is so caught up in the lies of all these different platforms that we get so lost in conformity, and we can't say what's the difference between authenticity and unrealistic expectations. How do we even differentiate between the two if we are living in both? If we look into our lives today, how many of us can say we are not being controlled by the different social media platforms? Did we wake up and check the gram, or TikTok, or maybe even just open your messages? The prominent issue of today's society is the identity crisis perpetuated by social media. Social media has contributed to identity crisis and is becoming a leading issue for our society and the mental health of teens. While an identity crisis can be considered just a phase, having your identity rooted in the wrong foundation will lead to a problem. But let's slow down for a second. What if what we're feeling, it's not easy to name? Sometimes it feels like pressure, sometimes like confusion, and other times like straight up emptiness. Is it just regular teenage stuff or something more? That's where we need to pause and ask, what's the difference between just going through a phase and actually losing yourself? Teenage angst is a normal part of growing up, marked by strong emotions and uncertainty as teens try to figure out who they are. Teenage angst is puberty. Identity crisis and teenage angst, even though they are similar, are not entirely the same. Teenage angst and identity crisis might feel the same, but they're not. Teenage angst is mood swings. Identity crisis is not knowing who you are at all. A strong sense of identity contributes to self-confidence and emotional resilience. Those struggling with identity crisis often experience anxiety, depression, or feelings of alienation. Understanding our identity doesn't mean staying the same forever. It helps us evolve by recognizing which aspects of ourselves are core and which can change as we grow. However, most importantly of all, our identity is important because it reflects God's character in the world and through us as Christians, who are called to be children of God, and if children, then heirs, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him in order that we might also be glorified with him. Romans 8:17. Social media triggers the brain's dopamine system, releasing bursts of the pleasure chemical in response to likes, comments, and constant new content. This frequent stimulation leads to elevated dopamine levels, making users crave more and repeat the behavior. When users log off, dopamine drops sharply, causing discomfort and driving them to return for another boost. This cycle is called dopamine loop. Brain activity in people addicted to social media mirrors that of drug addicts, particularly in reward-related areas. Over time, social media addiction can cause changes in brain structure and lead to real-life issues like strained relationships and emotional distress. All addictions are difficult to break. However, a social media addiction can be even more difficult because most people don't even know they are addicted. Because we're so focused on the different social media platforms, we forget to enjoy the face-to-face interactions. During a 2021 study at a university in Saudi Arabia, researchers found that more than half of the 300 participants reported prolonged use of social media had impacted their social interactions, negatively affecting family relationships and friendships, while also making face-to-face communication more difficult. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter provide the ability to stay connected with peers and family. The convenience of digital communication has made face-to-face interaction seem less necessary, as people find it easier to send a quick message or comment on a post rather than meet in person. This shift has had a profound impact on our ability to cultivate and maintain meaningful relationships in the world. It is important to strike a balance between our online and offline relationships, ensuring that we prioritize meaningful connections in both realms. This digital age has given rise to a new form of social comparison. Constant exposure to carefully curated online personas has caused people to compare their own lives to the highlight reels of others. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy, ultimately affecting one's self-esteem and ability to form genuine connections. The perception that others are living more fulfilling lives or having more fun is called the fear of missing out, or FOMO, and it has gained attention with the rise of activity on social media platforms. FOMO can fuel anxiety that can lead to compulsive checking of social media, feeling restless, and a sense of inadequacy. As many as 69% of Americans have experienced a fear of missing out at some point in their life, according to a study by OnePoll. Continuously checking on what others are doing on social media can create a perception that one's peers are constantly engaging in socially bonding activities, further intensifying feelings of anxiety. Social proof is when we look to others to guide our choices. Positive reviews make us trust a product more. An influencer's endorsement like Kylie Jenner's can drive huge sales. Trending dance on TikTok or Instagram work the same way. People join in because it seems popular. We naturally assume that if many others like or do something, it must be worth doing. This is social proof in action. It's based on the idea that if many people are doing something, it must be the right or best choice. The 5 most dangerous words in business are, everyone else is doing it. Parents say this, if your friend jumps off of a cliff, will you jump too? As a way to remind us to stop and think for ourselves. With social proof, however, there is more jumping and less thinking. People often follow trends or make decisions based on what others are doing, rather than critically evaluating if it's the right. Herd mentality is a tendency to follow the crowd, often without questioning why. Social proof fuels this by making people more likely to copy others, especially those they admire, like influencers. When influencers promote a product or ideas, followers often adopt them because of a strong emotional and identity-based connection. This influence goes beyond trends. It shapes how people see themselves and their place in a group. As a result, following influencers can feel like expressing personal identity, not just preference. There is also a deadly side to social media. In many instances, people have taken their own lives because of the cyberbullying they have endured online. Here are a few examples of how this occurred. Jessica Laney was a 16-year-old girl from Florida who took her own life in 2012 after experiencing online harassment. She was an active user of the social networking site Ask.fm, where anonymous users sent her cruel and abusive messages, including comments telling her to harm herself. Molly Russell, UK 2017, a 14-year-old girl who died by suicide after being exposed to disturbing self-harm content on Instagram. Amanda Todd, Canada 2012, suffered from severe anxiety and depression before taking her own life. These are lives that have been taken, disrupted, and disturbed by online harassment and the relentless cruelty of cyberbullying, leaving behind a trail of pain, unanswered questions, and a pressing need for change in how we navigate digital spaces. Social media often presents a filtered, exaggerated version of reality, which can distort how individuals see themselves and others. Over time, constant exposure to idealized images and lifestyles can lead to confusion, paranoia, and disconnection from the real world. Psychosis is a condition where a person loses touch with reality, and excessive use of social media can contribute to this by blurring the lines between real life and online illusions. We're constantly bombarded with images of success, beauty, and happiness that are impossible to achieve, creating an unreachable ideal. The truth is that what we're seeing is just an edited, filtered, and curated version of other people's lives. Remember, the neighbor's grass may look greener, but they might just be using an augmented reality filter. Social media blurs the line between reality and online personas, leading to a distorted sense of self. The pressure to maintain a curated sense can make us reliant on external validation, causing confusion about who we truly are. This reliance on likes and trends creates a fragile identity and an ongoing identity crisis. Use social media as a tool to enhance your life, not as a weapon that controls it. Go to the word before you go to the words in caption. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not to your own understanding. Matthew 4:4. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. We find similar ideas in Proverbs 3:6 and 2 Corinthians 5:21. When we put God first, we live our lives with the purpose of pleasing God, following His will for us, and obeying His commands and the guidance of the Holy Spirit. The Bible tells us in 1 John 2:15 to put God first and live out Jesus Christ's command, to love the Lord and love others. God knows we cannot love the world and Him at the same time. The love of one pushes out the love of the other, because the things that fill this world are not of God. God created our souls to hunger for what is eternal. Therefore, nothing in this world will ever satisfy. Jesus warns us of our dangerous and formidable enemy, Satan, who works aggressively to tempt us with the things of this world. John 10:10. The good news is that we have a choice when it comes to Satan's lies and temptations. So the question for us is this: who will we choose, God or the world? Choosing God requires putting systems in place in advance to protect our hearts and minds, because loving the world is a gradual process. Our enemy is highly skilled and enticing and tempting. Our souls were made to crave the eternal, but social media feeds us the temporary. It promises validation, acceptance, even identity, but it never truly satisfies. Satan knows this. He uses the world's standards of what's trendy, what's acceptable, what gets the most likes as weapons of confusion. That's why choosing God isn't just a one-time decision. It's a daily choice to protect our hearts and minds from being shaped by a broken system. This is where abstinence comes in. Not just from physical indulgences, but digital ones too. A digital detox helps us unplug from the noise and remember that social media is a tool, not your identity. Just like we don't obsess over our toothbrush or wrench, we shouldn't let our phones control us. They're tools. Use them. Don't let them use you. According to studies, digital detoxing improves mental health, sleep, focus, and relationships. Instead of scrolling, go outside, move, talk to someone, reconnect with real life. Because no filter or algorithm can replace the value of authentic connection or a stable identity. Erickson's theory of development tells us adolescence is when we face the crucial battle of identity versus role confusion. It's when we ask, who am I? What matters to me? These are big questions, and social media often gives us small, shallow answers. We start defining ourselves by beauty, popularity, and achievement. But what happens when those fade? The truth is, no number of likes can define your worth. You relapse after years of sobriety. Does that make you a failure? You lose your looks. Are you no longer valuable? Of course not. Real identity is rooted in who you are in Christ, not what the world says about you. And that takes patience, grace, and time. Scripture tells us to resist worldly standards, Galatians 2, and to remember that we are children of God, Romans 8. The world's rules and labels shift constantly, and if we chase them, we lose ourselves. But Christ offers us a clear, unshakable identity, one that isn't canceled or outdated. We must put social media in its rightful place, a place of purpose, not pressure. Yes, it can be a space for discovery, but only if we engage with authenticity, set boundaries, and avoid letting comparison steal our joy. We live in a time where everyone's chasing the next viral trend, the next post-worthy moment. But this pursuit is wearing us down. We're losing our contentment, our patience, and our joy in simply things. Instead of growing into who we were created to be, we're reshaping ourselves daily to fit into feeds and filters. The result? A generation so plugged in, we're completely tuned out. Teens glued to their screens, forming their identity from strangers instead of scripture. That's not just a phase, that's a crisis. But here's the hope. We don't have to stay stuck in the scroll. Identity doesn't come from likes, it comes from the one who loved us first. So put down the phone, pick up the word, look in the mirror and remind yourself that you are not what the world says you are, but who God says you are. Our role model hides their true self behind the makeup, fake-ups, and dress-ups of their screen, leaving the outside world unaware of what is actually taking place behind the camera. And being so drawn to the online personas and dopamine loops that social media provide, we don't even recognize it. Let us choose to live rooted in truth, not trends. Let us not be defined by the world's fleeting standards, but by God's external promises. Because at the end of the day, it won't be our follower count or curated posts that matter, but who we followed with our lives. Trust in the Lord with all your hearts and lead not to your own understandings. Proverbs 3, 5-6. Thank you.
Sasha, that was great. I read through this several times before we talked, and I got to tell you, the way you presented this took this to the next level. It was outstanding, so well done.
Thank you.
You have a gift for public speaking. Keep going. You scared me into maybe canceling my TikTok account, number one. And secondly, just so we're clear, we're not checked. This is notes. These are notes.
Okay.
And, questions, of course. After you did this research and wrote this paper, do you find yourself using social media less or more or no different?
You know, if I'm being completely honest, if I did have social media, I probably wouldn't write on this, but I don't. So it doesn't affect me.
So you have no social media accounts?
I do not.
Good for you. Well, you made that question easy, so I get a second one. I think you paint the picture that, and I happen to agree with this, folks that are have their lives embedded in social media seem to be followers, not necessarily of Christ, but followers of not leaders, let's put it that way, not leaders.
Yeah.
But do you have any examples of any leaders that might use social media in a positive way that and maybe influence their leadership styles?
Joyce Myers is one leader that I think is out there that not only uses social media as a platform to influence, but also as a platform to like help people who got lost, because she shares her experience with the world in a way to let them, and even teens, know that they're not alone. She has gone through these things. She went through them. She survived. So can teens.
Great job. I want to say that. My first question is, how do algorithms shape what we believe or care about? This can pull into politics or religion, whatever it is.
And by algorithms, we're still circling around social media.
Yep.
Just like, okay, so as my paper stated, because of social media, everyone is always trying to figure out what's the next trendy thing, what they should follow. With the influencers and all that, they're always trying to find what the next best thing is to follow. And with that, like I said, we don't have a firm sense of identity. We try to cope with what our influencers are doing, how they're living, even if it's not real. We don't know if it's real, but that is what we try to do.
Nicely done. You are a good speaker for sure, and I appreciate that you were loud and clear and didn't have to lean in to hear you. Thank you. So what role do you think the pandemic played in the identity crisis? You didn't mention that in your paper at all, and I know that was 5 years ago at this point, and you were still living in Jamaica then. So I don't know what the differences would be between Jamaica and the US, but I have lots to say about it, but I would like to hear what you have to say about it.
So that is an excellent question. I really appreciate that one. I think the pandemic, I'm not going to blame it all on it, but I feel like because we were all stuck at home, that's where it kind of started in a sense. Because we were bored at home doing online school. Nobody really wanted to do that. No offense to the teachers, but we really did not. And then we were all just stuck at home. And then for me, at least in Jamaica, I did have social media. For me, it was that I was just so bored. I had to find something to do. And the quickest thing for me to do was pull my phone out and scroll on these dances and all that. So I felt like the pandemic did have an impact on that, but I'm not going to blame it all on the whole use. Because not necessarily social media, but addiction to those things have been around for quite some while, so I can't just blame it on the pandemic.
But you certainly recognize that it intensified.
Most definitely.
During that time. So it sounds like your home is already making these choices, but if given the authority to dictate your younger siblings or perhaps fellow students' use of social media, what boundaries would you set to protect them from an identity crisis of their own?
That's also a really good question. Wow. For my younger siblings, so that they wouldn't, because my paper is more focused on social media leading to an identity crisis, for them to not have that, I would set boundaries as to, even if I had social media, I feel like you need to lead as example for kids even in this generation to understand what they need to do and what they don't need to do. So if I had social media, I would set an example as to abstain from social media with my siblings, not just put them out there and say, you need to put your phone down, go outside, touch grass, whatever. I also want them to be able to see that I'm leading as example and for them to follow me.
I'll get an easy one for you. Most of your paper and your discussion was from the perspective in my opinion anyway, the perspective of an individual looking at social media and being influenced by it. What about folks that are sort of on the other side of that fence? And I'm thinking of Facebook posts of people who are often posting about what they're doing today in their wonderful lives and how they seem to need to try to demonstrate to everyone what a perfect little world they might live in. Did you give that any thought? And do you see that as somewhat of an identity connection as well?
Yes, because if we didn't have those people, I'm not saying everybody should stop posting on social media, but if you know you're posting great, keep doing it. But if we have those people who are constantly putting their lives out there for these younger children to see it and think, oh, you know, I want to be just like that person, not in a good sense, but you know, that's what I want to be like. Like, even if I have to grow up into a way that I wasn't naturally like mold into, I want to be like that, they need to stop, just like point blank. Like, it's your life, I get it, maybe a pic or two, you don't have to be out here putting it all up on social media as a way to influence these little kids who hardly even know the world generally. Like, keep your opinion to yourself in a kind of way, you know?
One last one. I want you to imagine for a second a television commercial from the 1970s. Tell me when you got it. Tell me when you're there.
You want me to like actually like play it out or like?
No, I want you to imagine one in your head and picture a TV or a movie star from that time. And you can imagine it easy enough. What do you think the biggest differences are? Do you think those folks influenced people like me when I was younger? And do you think there's much of a difference? Of course. Do you think that there's much of a difference? And what are the differences between then and now?
So let me start off with the similarities.
Maybe not just the differences, but the consequences.
Okay, let me start off with the similarities. Because for one, they were all trying to go out and reach a certain audience. They were all trying to be influencers. It doesn't matter how they were trying to do it. But the thing with today's age and back then in the 70s, they only had one TV in front of them. There weren't a whole bunch of cell phones and iPads and laptops and all of that. In today's day and age, kids always have, their screen is literally always like, probably like right here, up to their face. And so they're always seeing these things. So parents don't really, I wouldn't say care that much, but they're not really that concerned because it's been there and it's probably still gonna be there, only it might evolve a little bit more. But back then, in the 70s, they saw a TV commercial come on. They don't want to see that. They only have one TV in their house. Ain't nobody trying to watch that. They throw popcorn at the TV or something. They don't want to see that come up. They want to watch their movie, see their movie stars. They don't want to watch some influencer tell them to buy something new.
It's a good perspective.
So I believe that your core values and your morals make up part of your identity. So how are the younger generations using social media differently than older ones? And what does that say about their values evolving?
So I think with the older generation, like the millennials, or not even gonna try. Yeah, I feel like with them back there, they didn't really have that much like I said, television and like phones and stuff. But now when you grow up in a certain situation and then you like move out of your parents' house and then you go and you see the world at a different angle. You try to also get involved in it at that sense. Like my paper wasn't that much focused around like that much of an age gap. It was mostly like adolescents and teens. But I feel with people back then, it just shaped them because now they are in this new era where everybody's glued to their phones. It's kind of in a way that they feel like they need to also be glued to it. You know what I'm saying?
Another one. How has social media changed the way we communicate empathy or resolve conflict?
For one, with social media, you have to try to think how someone's emotions are on it. Like I send you a message and I'm like, hey, good morning. You can't really tell how to interpret that. You could be like, oh, that person is definitely mad at me. Just say, hey, good morning. Like no emojis or anything. Because nowadays teenagers connect with emojis and stuff like that. but no emojis, they're like, oh, this person is definitely mad at me. But if it's a face-to-face interaction, you see their facial emotion, they're able to express it in a different sense as a way that you know what they are actually talking about instead of trying to interpret the message over text.
We have time for more. We do. So God created us to be creative beings. Do you think social media causes us to be less productive, less creative, or the opposite, more productive and more creative?
That's a really good question. I feel like with social media, I can't really tell because it depends on how you are actually using it. Like, it's the usage of it. If you're using it to, like, let's say a teacher sending emails out or something, trying to communicate with others in a good sense, not in a way that like drowns out everything else, but trying to communicate in a way that actually helps someone else, I feel like that's being productive. But if you're gonna sit on your phone and doom scroll for like 3 or 4 hours, that's not productive at all.
Nadine, do you have more questions?
Can you envision a healthier model of social media that still allows for connection, but without the negative side effects?
Parents put a non-parental control.
Well, and yes, but like an actual model of a new platform.
Like a social media, but a different one that isn't as exposed to certain things? Absolutely not. Things just keeps getting more and more. Like at the moment we have these things in like this little box, but then the box gets cut in a little sense, so it opens up and then it opens up. Like it's just gonna keep going and going and going. I don't think it's gonna cut down anytime soon.
What do you think the long-term consequences will be if we continue down this path of constant online visibility? This can be with mental health, their body image, or the way people see other people, or how they see themselves.
I'll use my examples of the girls who took their own lives because they were being bullied on social media. If we continue in a certain path like that, it will only get worse down the road. For me, I don't really see it getting better unless we cancel social media, but we both know that that's never gonna happen. We just got the internet, they're not gonna take it away. So that's what I think. I don't really think that's what's gonna happen.
So give us some hope here. Imagine, just for a second, 5 generations from now, and give me the best case scenario that you can imagine on what this might look like. Not the worst case. Give us some hope here.
Best case scenario, social media might pass in some sense. There might be something new. It might be positive. I wouldn't know. Not there yet, but I feel like there's a little bit of hope. I just don't really know what it is. Because at the rate we're going now, and I'm being so honest, if I had social media platforms, I'd probably just be as addictive as those who had it. At the rate we're going, I don't know what the hope would really be. Like, sure, we'll be the next generation and we'll have things, but I feel like for one too, as Christians, we could also like step out in a sense and help this younger generation to see that social media isn't their only way of like finding hope or identity.
Okay, that wasn't as optimistic as I was hoping for, so I want you to think on that question over the weekend, and I'll see you Monday in class. We have one more class I'm going to see you in, and I want a better answer.
Do you think people are becoming more productive in their real lives because of how they curate themselves online? This can go to influencers, leaders, and followers.
Could you repeat that again, please?
Do you think people are becoming more productive in their real lives because of how they curate themselves online?
No. So going back to the part in my speech where I had said, give me 1 second. I said our role models hide their true selves behind the makeup, fake-ups, and dress-up of their screens, leaving the outside world unaware of what is actually taking place behind the camera. We have no clue what's going on back there. This minute, this one influencer might just be up here posting and taking pictures and all of that. And then the next minute she gets off of camera and she's over here. Her whole house is a mess. She just fixed up this one spot. Like, this is all I need to show the media that it's pretty cool. She just fixed this one spot up that's in the mirror, the view of the camera. Everything else is a mess. All of her other life is a disaster. So I don't think so.
Do you think the followers are becoming more productive because they believe what they're watching is true?
So, like using the example that I said just now, the influencer just uses that certain part. In some sense, it might also help the followers to think, oh, my influencer is doing really good. Her house is really neat. So I need to aspire like that in a sense, So I think they might be productive in some sense, but, it's half and half, so.
Okay, last one. What are the most significant psychological effects you've seen from constant social media engagement in people?
Not being able to put the phone down even when you have something else to do. The other night, I'm talking from personal experience, the other night I was supposed to send a message to a friend about something, and then I went down and I took up and I was like, oh, this dress is really cool. Like, I gotta check Shein out for this. Like, I might actually wear this soon. And then I'm like, oh, that is not even what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be doing something else. So even if you don't have social media platforms, you might get addicted in some other sense, like Shein.
Do you have anything like more of a mental health psychological effect? Like body dysmorphia or maybe depression, anxiety, like something more in the mental?
Depression and anxiety, because let's say a kid is too online that they're failing their classes, they're falling too behind because they're trying to live up to this lifestyle of an influencer online. The parents take their phone, they get mad about it, they get depressed, they go into this little shady rock. My parents don't even see me because they took my phone away because I'm not doing good at schoolwork. I feel like that could lead to a certain level of depression, which is leading back to what I said. Taking away your kid's phone to help them to go into this digital detox will not help at all. It would just lead to them thinking that you don't actually like them or you just don't want them to do what they want to do. But actually leading by example and showing them that, hey, I can do this. If I can do this, you can do it too. Let's do it together. Let's buddy up. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Debbie, do you have any final questions? Mr. Barlow, any final questions? Well, guys, thank you. We're going to have a quick intermission. There's some snacks in the room across from the kitchen if you're desperate for something to keep you awake for the next two. explores the film industry and the decline in interest and morals. On his panel, we have Abby Wilkes, Jess Miller, and Dave Turner.
What is the most distinctive part of being human? It could be the soul or the ability to love, but from these comes something that is most inherently human: art. Art is one thing that separates us from being animals. We do not need art for survival. However, we still decide to make it. Think of the first humans, the cavemen. They needed to hunt, ward off animals, grow food to survive, but some still decided it was important to make cave paintings. Humanity knows our stories are important and that they deserve to be told, and art is how we do that. Through paintings, music, or plays, art continues to be one of the most meaningful areas of human life. Following the creation of art, many new art forms evolved. For example, the first sculptures were created not long after the cave paintings. There's evidence that even the early humans had instruments, and it can be assumed that people sang even before that. Theatrical performances were created in Egypt around 2500 BC and quickly evolved through the Greeks. These performances offered a new way to tell stories by showing the events as they unfolded. Plays eventually developed into the moving picture because it became an easier way to watch and make plays. This developed into the movies and TV shows that we know today. The film industry is a form of entertainment or art. Invented on December 28, 1895 by the Lumiere brothers, movies are a story or event recorded by a camera as a set of moving images and shown in a theater or on television. Movies and TV are unique because of how they deeply affect us. An example of this is catharsis, the process of releasing and thereby providing relief from strong or repressed emotions, usually with the help of an outside source. Movies also affect us through their messages that show people the perspectives that they may have never considered. However, the film industry is declining. Theatrical tickets sold in the US have fallen by 38% over the past decade, while ticket prices have increased by 33%. This points to consumers being less interested in movies. Between 2017 and 2019, the worldwide box office hovered around $40 billion annually. However, in 2022 and 2023, it only reached about half that amount, and 2024 is lagging even further behind. TV has been disrupted by social media, so traditional broadcasters can't keep up. Platforms like YouTube thrive on unregulated, creator-driven content, while TV is burdened by high costs and low desirability. People aren't watching traditional TV because it isn't compelling enough. Instead, people say there's nothing on TV, despite hours of content. Another issue plaguing this industry recently is a prioritization of profit over quality. Hollywood has turned into a terrible movie pumping out money machine. This decline could be from the state of our culture, fueled by greed, self-indulgence, and wokeness. This culture affects movies and the messages, morals, and ideals that they exemplify because art is a sign of the times and culture around it. This theatrical decline reflects but also fuels this cultural downfall. We need to fix this because movies have the ability to impact our lives, whether through catharsis or by shedding light on hard topics. Are today's movies still good? Not necessarily quality, but rather moral and uplifting. The kind of good that is in the same vein as ideas of generosity, respect, or compassion. While there are some outliers for movies that still do have good morals, a majority of them do not. Amelia Perez is a 2024 movie about a cartel leader getting a sex change. Though the script and songs aren't good, the message is worse. Even though it has good themes of redemption, they're ruined by the idea that being trans is okay. Still, it was nominated for 13 Oscars despite getting a 17% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. This proves that the Hollywood elites care more about the woke narrative than viewer opinions. This is an obvious example, but many movies just like it are being praised as amazing when most of them could barely even be classified as good. Should Christians watch secular movies? A quality, morally sound movie can bring a lot a lot of good. Secular movies can have good messages or points of view for a Christian home. Christians should not just shut out. Some examples are A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood or The Lord of the Rings. Movies like The Lord of the Rings will not be perfectly Christian, but the absence of sex and profanity and good themes of strength in the battle between light and dark can help a Christian home. Christians should not just shut out the rest of the world and everything. If we do, and just try to convince people to follow God with no knowledge of what they think, we will fail. Paul exemplified this idea while in the Acropolis. Obviously, this doesn't mean to go watch a movie about a trans drug dealer, but movies can provide insight into what non-believers think of the world. Mainstream movies can also be beneficial in a Christian home because of how they affect our brainwaves. They're powerful tools that can profoundly affect our emotional and physiological state. Comedies stimulate joy and laughter, and romantic films tend to elicit emotions of joy, nostalgia, and affection, often calming the mind and reducing stress levels. Based on a study from Omnipenth, these and many other genres can bring up emotions that are beneficial for our bodies. This is a major reason that movies are good for a Christian household. Films address social issues such as discrimination, poverty, or human rights abuses, bringing awareness and creating conversations that can change perception. Movies like 12 Years a Slave and The Schindler's List shed light on historical atrocities and contribute to discussions about tolerance and justice. These stories can reflect and reinforce prevailing political ideologies or, in contrast, challenge dominant narratives. Movies can shape the way people dress, speak, and behave. Fashion trends can be influenced by iconic films such as Clueless or The Great Gatsby. Memorable lines from movies can become a part of everyday language. Think of phrases people quote from movies such as "May the Force be with you" from Star Wars or "I'll be back" from The Terminator. Films have the power to spark conversations and inspire change by showing topics that may be overlooked. Hidden Figures showed the continued oppression of people of color even nearing the end of the civil rights movement. However, movies can also promote something wrong, like the live-action Beauty and the Beast and how it made the character of LeFou homosexual, pushing that lifestyle into mainstream media. Movies have had a significant loss in moral standing from the past. Movies were censored up to the 1960s because they had to adhere to the Hays Code, which was essentially censorship. The government saw films as heavily influential and in need of regulation. This code required films to mirror conservative American values. Cameron Carr puts it this way in his Magazine 6000 article: "In a time of massive blockbusters, overcomplicated yet idiotic plot twists, and gratuitous sex, I miss the simpler times. In the movies of our era, the graphic violence and nudity and casual use of profanity would make many people uncomfortable." Cinema can change people's opinions on specific issues without affecting more stable constructs. The film JFK influenced judgments about the causes of his crime, but didn't change the political beliefs of the audience. Movies can impact gender and ethnic stereotypes, change attitudes towards certain groups of people, and cause newly formed opinions on various issues. HIV films contribute to sympathy for people living with HIV, and TV series with transgender characters contribute to positive attitudes towards transgender people. The influence of cinema has been investigated by the National Library of Medicine. The scientific changes found in this study often pointed towards a different mindset conditioned to be okay with things like LGBTQ+. So, movies are no longer exemplified biblical morals, and this causes people to change how they view the truth. People should be able to turn to Christian movies when they want high-quality films with good morals, but they can't. There are some high-quality Christian movies and shows, such as The Best Christmas Pageant Ever or The Chosen, but most are letdowns with no depth. These movies have good messages, but often become more akin to propaganda than art. They begin with communicating some Christian theme, prayer, believing, the church, then the story is crafted around this theme. This is true even when the story is based on a real-life incident. Characters in Christian movies don't sound like real-life people, but as Christians desire real life to be. This is why Christian protagonists are always earnest, even when they don't have all the answers, or why non-Christian antagonists are like one-dimensional Christian memes. Christian movies have embraced a theology of prosperity rather than the cross. This is why, apart from inauthentic dialogue and stilted acting, Christian movies ring so untrue to the ears tuned to reality. The world of Christian movies is uncomfortable sitting in the ambiguity of suffering, confusion, or chaos for too long, yet we know real life doesn't work like that. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, and we need to convey that in our movies if we want them to have any impact on audiences. Christian movies do need to be of higher quality if we want the general audience to watch them. Filmmakers blame lack of quality on low budgets. However, money doesn't always equal quality. Many movies with small budgets are loved by audiences. Blair Witch Project, 60,000, Mad Max, 350,000, and Napoleon Dynamite, 400,000. So we can make good Christian movies with lower budgets. Another thing plaguing the film industry is how people oftentimes are unable to watch a full movie. This is because of the fast-paced nature of our current lives, where people feel like they have no time. Although the Bureau of Labor Statistics says people have 4 to 6 hours of free time, enough to watch a movie, many prefer to spend that time with friends or doing other enjoyable activities. Another reason is that phones and social media offer endless content, and when it gets boring after 10 seconds, people just scroll. This self-gratifying culture has led to shrinking attention spans, with Microsoft reporting an average of just 8 seconds. As a result, people now say movies are too long, citing examples such as Dune 2 or Avengers Endgame. Unless someone is very interested, they likely won't sit through a 3-hour film. Some movie lovers still make time, but most get bored and turn to their phones. Studies from YouGov show 48% of people over 55, 59% of people aged 18 to 34, and over 60% of those aged 35 to 54 look at their phones while watching. This happens because movies aren't engaging enough, so people scroll through Instagram or play Block Blast. Boredom in audiences has had detrimental effects on the film industry. Movie makers want people to watch their movies so that they can make a profit. If people watch half a movie, call it boring, and tell their friends it's not worth watching, they lose out big time. So what do they do to combat this? Make their movies more engaging. However, because of this extreme attempt at engagement, movies often have minimal plot but huge amounts of gunfights, explosions, deaths, raunchy comedy, profanity, and much more. This can be seen in movies such as The Hitman's Bodyguard, The Expendables, or the more recent Fast and Furious movies. In Fast and Furious 10, the plot, which includes aspects of struggle, revenge, and suspense, is overshadowed and made irrelevant by a superficial focus on exuberant amounts of action. Movies like these exist because people won't get bored during a movie if there's no moment in the movie to get bored. So, movie makers want people to be invested enough in this action to watch the whole movie. Movies do have a lot of problems, especially lately. Should we be content with this mediocrity? No. Movies are important. They are art, they impact our culture, they can help us feel important feelings, they can bring people together, and they matter too much to give up on. So, we need to stop supporting these movies and TV shows that push bad messages. Sometimes we justify ourselves by saying, well, it's only one horror movie, it's not going to be that bad. Or, there's only a few sex scenes, I just won't look. All these things do matter, though, because by watching these types of shows and movies, we are supporting these bad messages. It can be easy to give up on movies. However, we just need to look a bit further. Though it seems like so many wrong movies are coming out lately, there are good ones that we can support. An example from even just 2025 is The Electric State, which mixes interesting action with a good, deep, flushed-out plot. And there are countless other movies like it that are also good to watch. Christians need to make more high-quality movies. The message behind Christian films deserves our best effort. Many feel like Hallmark movies, substanceless, one-dimensional, and fake. People need to see the truth of what being a Christian is like, and we must portray that truth. We also need to address how unappealing even good Christian movies are to a general audience. A bad movie can still look interesting if it's well made. We should include storylines that secular audiences find compelling, like love or redemption, instead of only how some guy became Christian. While some Christian movies include these ideas, they're often steamrolled by religious messaging. We also need to make these movies more entertaining. Attention spans are shorter now, and if we want people to watch and hear the message, we need jokes, action, interesting characters, and suspenseful plots. Christian films can feel like sermons because of the lack of entertainment. We must avoid shoving the gospel down viewers' throats. The Christian message should be central, but if we overload it with preachy jargon or aim only to convert, we alienate secular viewers. Ignoring this creates films that only super Christians enjoy. But if we get it right, we can make beautiful movies that truly impact lives. The first movie that comes to my mind when I think of a movie that includes all these things is The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, a 2024 family movie that represents how to do a Christian movie right. First of all, in advertising, it isn't an overtly Christian movie, but Christians know they will have Christian themes. This invites secular audiences to watch the movie. Another thing that it does amazingly is it has its own interesting plot. Instead of only being about how the rebellious herdman kids became Christians, it's about how they wanted to be in the Christmas pageant and the fun and crazy hijinks that come about. It has jokes and funny moments that can genuinely make you laugh, so it's desirable to comedy lovers. But finally, and most important of all, it takes important Christian moments, makes them feel emotionally fueled moments that even non-Christians can feel and resonate with. The biggest example of this is near the end of the movie, when the oldest herdman sister, playing Mary in the pageant, starts crying, overwhelmed by the story of Jesus' birth and most likely being touched by the Holy Spirit. It's an incredibly emotional moment that can be felt by anyone with a heart. This movie has good Christian moments, beautifully mixed in with humorous and interesting moments that feel good enough for a mainstream audience. It feels like you're watching a mainstream movie, but has so many Christian themes woven out throughout the whole movie. So we need to do this in other movies. Make them have Christian ideals and themes, but also make them feel like they aren't really Christian movies, but more like another romance or comedy movie to watch, because that's how we will reach a wider general audience. What distinguishes us as humans, our creativity and capacity for expression, is mostly found in our art, especially through film. Movies are more than just entertainment. They tell our stories, reflect cultural values, and evoke deep emotional responses, demonstrating their significance in shaping our world and influencing our perspectives. Art has always been an extremely important thing to us as humans, from cave paintings to the film industry. However, the recent decline in the quality and impact of films should make us rethink this industry. It has become increasingly commercialized, prioritizing profit over substance and creativity. This trend not only diminishes the artistic areas of film, but also takes away their ability to promote meaningful conversations or foster a deeper understanding of our human stories. Movies that are devoid of thought-provoking narratives ultimately fail to enrich our lives and can bring harmful stereotypes and ideologies. As the audience, we must take an active role in shaping the narrative of the film industry by demanding more from filmmakers and supporting works that elevate us. This means seeking out and recommending films that promote positive messages and thoughtful storytelling while being discerning about those that perpetuate harmful values. By choosing to engage with high-quality, well-made films, we contribute to a culture that values authenticity and depth over superficial entertainment. The Christian film industry bears a particular responsibility. It struggles with producing content that resonates with secular audiences, often relying on overused narratives and one-dimensional characters. However, the message of faith needs to be expressed through storytelling that reflects the complexities of real life. It is important for Christian filmmakers to strive for authenticity, moving beyond simple portrayals of faith to create compelling narratives that engage both believers and skeptics. By creating films that resonate on an emotional level and tackle universal themes such as love, redemption, or the human struggle, Christian filmmakers can help their work reach a wider audience. The decline in viewer engagement and the rise of culture centered around instant gratification necessitates a shift in how films are made and considered. Filmmakers must adapt to create compelling content that captures attention without compromising quality. This involves striking a delicate balance between entertaining the audience and providing substantive narratives that provoke thought and elicit emotional responses. The future of film depends on our willingness to nurture creativity and prioritize substance over entertainment. By actively participating in the preservation of cinema, we ensure that it remains a powerful medium for connection, reflection, and understanding in our changing world. Films have the potential to shed light on the intricacies of human condition and foster empathy across diverse perspectives. It is vital to engage with the film industry not only as passive consumers, but as active participants. So we need to support the art of filmmaking that captures the importance of our shared human experience. We have a unique opportunity to support creation of art that not only entertains, but also enlightens and inspires. By advocating for high-quality storytelling, we reaffirm the fundamental role that art plays in our culture. As we move forward, we need to recognize that the impact of film that can have in shaping our understanding of ourselves and the world around us, and commit to preserving and celebrating the power of cinema as an artistic expression of our humanity. Through this commitment, we not only contribute to the legacy of film, but also to the ongoing narrative of what it means to be human in an increasingly complex and interconnected world. Thank you.
So in your thesis, you raise a concern about moral desensitization in film, but at the same time, you also critique Christian films for not being authentic. So if we want art to reflect real human experience, including struggle and brokenness, how do we balance that with your concerns about moral influence?
I think it's important to talk about stories and include things that are harder to talk about, like harder topics and that kind of stuff. And I think sometimes the way that we're doing that in mainstream movies isn't always the right way. Like it's sometimes encouraging bad things and that kind of stuff. And so in Christian movies, we need to bring in those topics and stuff because we need our movies to be realistic to the real world so that they'll impact audiences. But yeah, we need the real experiences as well. So.
All right, you spent a lot of time arguing that art is inherently human, and it has been since the dawn of time, but I would really like to know why. Why are we drawn to it, and why does it matter so much?
I think one major thing is we as humans know that our story is important, or think that our story is important to be told. And I think art is just one of the many ways we do that, and probably one of the most obvious ways, because we can show like pictures or like movies like actually show a story. And yeah, I think just we as humans know our stories are important, and our story as humans are important. So that's kind of, art is kind of how we do that.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you for engaging with this topic. I feel like it's a really nuanced topic that's hard to navigate. So kudos for jumping on it.
Thank you.
I will just kind of piggyback off that question of if art is a human need, it's part of every human's need to feel accepted and like they are able to present themselves. Why is it limited to who is allowed to make art?
I think anyone can make art. Like, obviously, some art isn't as good as others because certain people just have talents. But I don't think it should be just limited to the Picassos to like make these beautiful artworks. I think anyone should be able to make paintings and all that stuff. And I think art is one of the things that like anyone can do, and like a lot of people do just in their free time, music, art, and that kind of stuff. So I do really think art is just kind of a universal thing. Like anyone can make it at any time, even if you're just drawing in the sand. So I do, like anyone can make art, I think.
I'm just gonna follow up again, sorry. If, I gotta think of how to phrase this. If art is, or through movies are an art form because they tell our stories, because they present a picture of the world, right? How do you navigate what stories should be told and which ones should not be told?
I think part of it definitely depends on like the culture around us, because obviously some stories people like not only don't want to hear, but like could be hurtful to a community or that kind of stuff. So definitely the community or the culture around us. But I forgot. Sorry, I totally just blanked. Well, could you just like kind of like summarize the question?
Just who, like why are some stories allowed to be told and others are not through this art form, through the art form specifically of film?
Yeah, culturally, definitely. And then also, like, I think a lot of people just choose not to deal with certain subjects. And as Mr. Turner said, like, sometimes we do need to bring those into our movies because it can help impact people and help them feel seen. And I feel like a lot of times people have trouble talking about and making movies about the harder topics. And so, because they want their movies to be liked or stuff like that. So I think it's definitely important to bring those aspects in, and yeah.
Okay, some might claim that if you add more jokes and explosions and suspense to Christian movies to make them have more of a secular feel, then you would be hiding Christ. So how could Christian filmmakers avoid that?
The way I think about it is like, we want the Christian message to be the focal point of the movie. That's what the movie should be about, and that's what we should be trying to show to believers and a non-secular audience to like impact them. And a lot of times movies fall short, especially Christian movies. Obviously there's good ones, but a lot of times they fall short and people just kind of get bored, or secular audiences aren't going to be drawn to them. So I think it's just helpful to add a little bit of action or jokes, and though that could be, like you said, hiding Christ a little bit or whatever, though that could be doing that a little bit, I think it also invites other secular audiences to come in and maybe just kind of like books. Like sometimes there's Christian books with less like Christian stuff, but then there's the bigger books that you can kind of build your way up to. So I think it's better to also have like entry level, like Christian movies that can kind of bring people into the industry and almost like invite secular audiences to hear more about it.
I'm just gonna, piggyback on that, because you also said that people are getting so bored with movies that Hollywood's throwing in more action and jokes, and it's just wearing people down and they don't care anymore. So how would that be different in a Christian film?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also just the amount of it, because I think it's actually the sequel to The Hitman's Bodyguard that I mentioned that does still have like a lot of action and stuff, but the plot is more fleshed out and stuff. So I think it's just really kind of like I said, the delicate balance, because it's very easy to just add a bunch of action and no plot, or like leave out the message of God. And so I think it's just striking that delicate balance of making it interesting enough, but not overshadowing the message or the plot.
So you mentioned like making a good movie like The Christmas Pageant to get viewers in. But with so many streaming platforms, it can be kind of hard to get your message across. And you also mentioned people have short attention spans. But we notice people binge watch things like Stranger Things if there's enough buzz around it. So how do you even get people interested in a low-budget Christian movie?
So obviously, I think the best Christmas pageant ever was a little bit higher budget. But like with a low budget, it can be hard to advertise your movie. But with things like social media that are free, like sometimes you can just start posting videos and stuff like that. Like I know personally, obviously I might use social media too much, but I get a lot of ads for like random movies and stuff that I would probably never watch, but they're all over my For You page and stuff like that. So social media is definitely a good outlet for that. And also, what would you say about streaming, like attention, like binging?
There's so many different streaming platforms. So how do you get like something seen by a general audience to get people interested in a Christian message?
I think also things like PureFlix, obviously right now, aren't very inviting to a secular audience or that kind of stuff just because of how Christian movies are. But maybe a streaming service like that that maybe gets bigger over time, that does have Christian movies and stuff like that. Obviously we don't have one of those right now, but something like that could possibly help.
You bring up Dune 2 in Avengers as examples of the inability to sit through a long film. But I think both of those movies were record-breaking successes in the box office.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's still enough of an interest to obviously keep long movies going? Do you think movies should be shorter?
I definitely think there's enough interest, and like I said, people who like movies are gonna make time to watch movies. And so, like you said, there are box office hits and stuff, and millions of people around the world love those movies. So I think there is definitely enough people to keep it going, but I think there's also, like, I've heard from so many people, not as much Avengers Endgame, but Dune 2 was just like so boring and that kind of stuff. Like pretty much everyone I've talked to about it that I know. And so just kind of like, and I thought the movie had really good messages and stuff. So obviously shorter movies, like we need shorter movies for, like, as I said, people have shorter time in their days to do stuff. So it's nice to just have a short movie to sit down and watch, but I don't think those movies can be as impactful. And so, yeah, just cultivating that kind of maybe.
Do you think that all movies are art? I think because if you're talking in the world of film enough, that conversation of like what's a movie, what's film is going to come up, and it's kind of a pretentious conversation. But I think if you're comparing movies. If you're comparing movies that have completely different motivations, it's hard to compare them on the same level. So, like, would you compare, like, The Hangover to Lord of the Rings, or to, like, something, like, they have completely different motivations? So do you think both could be considered art?
Yeah. I think, like, the discussion on whether or not they're art is kind of like you said, like, just a really big kind of, I forget the word, dicey, I guess I'll use, kind of discussion. But I think that definitely it's important to have movies like that, like comedy movies, like the shorter ones, just because a lot of people like that kind of stuff. But it's not gonna really like impact people the way that other movies can, and a lot less of those movies have been coming out. Obviously, there's still a lot of good, like, quality movies that can impact audiences coming out, but there's just kind of been a decline over time. And I think that's more what I was referring to, but definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I guess my last question for you would be, how can Christians advocate for better Christian films? Because you were saying that that's the next step, that's what we need to do. So what are practical things that just Christian viewers can do?
This was the one question I was a little bit like, I hope I don't get that one. No, but like, I think it can be hard. Halfway through writing my thesis, I actually just sat down and I was like, well, like, what can we do? We're just the viewers. Like, it's hard to even like feel like we're making an impact. But I think it's just kind of like supporting those good movies that we do find, because a lot of times, like, there is a good Christian movie that like maybe I've never heard about, but it just gets overlooked. Kind of like you were saying, because there's just so much other content happening. And so maybe just finding those movies and supporting them, kind of to get more of a budget to those people, but also supporting good movies. So it can definitely feel like there's not a lot to do, but supporting those good movies and even like writing about it online, like reviews, that kind of stuff can impact too.
You covered just what I was about to say.
Do you think that engaging with movies intentionally as art instead of passively as just entertainment changes someone's ability to understand the perspective of the movie? If it has challenging themes or something that is different than what you agree with personally on a spiritual level, on a political level, whatever it is, does viewing it as art, as someone's art piece, change the way you interact with it?
I think definitely, yeah. Because, I mean, there's so many movies like maybe The Hunger Games where you could just go, I'm going to go watch this movie because it's got action and people killing each other or whatever. But if you like go and watch it and sit down and just think, like, what are the messages of this movie? Like, what's it trying to get across? Like, there's so many different themes of, like, political overreach and that kind of stuff that you might miss if you're only looking at it as entertainment, as people going in an arena and killing each other. So I think the way we interact with it can definitely change how we view it and the messages that we get from it.
Braden and Edgar are going to switch mics. And thank you, panel. Great job. The panel for our final presentation is Sarah Payne, Adam Schuknecht, and Pastor Rob Von Ediscudi. Edgar is going to be talking about how the noise of ethical relativism has made the search for truth a lot more difficult.
All right. So, across the centuries, thinkers from Aristotle to Augustine have insisted that truth and goodness possess a recognizable form, even if flawed human beings often grasp that form imperfectly. However, in modern times, doubts about the truth have grown into something relative. Nietzsche declared God dead. Freud reduced conscience to psychological conditioning. The 21st century digital revolution has spread the idea that truth can vary. It has put a relativist trope in every pocket. In an age saturated with notifications, 24-hour entertainment, and ever-shifting social norms, the very idea of objective truth can feel difficult to find or even impossible to achieve. Ethical relativism, the belief that morality depends on personal preference and cultural consensus, has been a dominant belief because it promises flexibility in a pluralistic world. Yet that promise comes with a problem. When every moral claim is equally valid, none can offer a solid moral basis for life. Meanwhile, Generation Z and Generation Alpha are growing up inside this digital ecosystem that changes reality through carefully edited reels and monetized opinions. Endless scrolling not only fragments attention, but also blurs the boundary between what is real and what is just curated reality. As algorithms accelerate opinions and ideas, it also magnifies controversy. Many young people report confusion about identity, purpose, and the very meaning of what is true and good, just as many of my peers have been talking about. In the midst of this cultural turbulence, the claim that God has revealed an unchanging moral order is contested. Relativism begins with a descriptive observation. Different cultures do in fact hold different customs. It then makes a prescriptive leap, concluding that no moral judgment can therefore transcend context. Ethical relativism is this principle applied to right and wrong. Murder may be wrong in one society, but it may be praised in another. But the argument still goes. Neither culture can be called objectively mistaken. While such tolerance appears compassionate, it dissolves the possibility of shared standards, which is the very glue that sustains trust, cooperation, and justice in our society. History offers ample testimony that without a reference point outside of our human opinion, the strong routinely exploit the weak. Even now, constant exposure to consumer advertising, partisan media, and influencer marketing directs attention away from sustained reflection on ultimate questions. First, I want to clear up two words. Tolerance means letting others speak and disagreeing peacefully, not necessarily believing that they're right. Relativism says that there is no single truth and everything depends on opinion. Some people actually believe that if you believe in real objective truth, you must be a biased and stubborn person. However, I believe that believing there is objective truth lets us have intellectual debates because we can test ideas against reality and yield results, instead of just trading preferences and opinions. So today I want to define ethical relativism and show why the main arguments for it don't hold up. I also want to point out that relativists still lean on these objective truths, such as human rights. I also want to explain why the Bible is a trustworthy guide for right and wrong, and how it surpasses any other source of truth. Then I want to explore how relativist thinking has spread amongst teenagers and how biblical truth can help. Firm moral standards don't make you arrogant and biased. They help you become fair, humble, and good for our society. So the question is, does ditching fixed truths really make the world kinder or just more confusing? Some people say that right and wrong change from place to place and from time to time. So there are no fixed moral rules. They give three reasons. History changes. Ancient Spartans left weak babies to die. Medieval Europeans burned heretics. And today, some countries allow same-sex marriage. Since morals keep shifting, they say morals must be made up by humans to keep up with this ever-changing world. Religions disagree. Even people who read the same holy book, go to the same church, sometimes reach opposite conclusions. So no single religion can claim it has the truth. And thirdly, high tolerance. It allows cultures, societies, and groups of people to keep peace amongst each other. Here's why those arguments don't work. Just because rules change doesn't mean that there are new rules are truly right. We ended slavery because freedom is generally good, not because it was a new fashion or a new trend. If morality were only an opinion, calling slavery evil would be like saying sandals are better than boots, just a preference or just an opinion. The third argument, it allows for a higher tolerance. doesn't really work. The idea of tolerance applied to its highest extent does not work, even in a liberal society, because there are still some principles, such as human dignity and freedom, that the majority of people will still uphold, regardless of what people group they might consider themselves to be in. Religious disagreements don't erase truth. They show that flawed people can misunderstand it. The Bible itself does warn us that verses can be twisted and misinterpreted. When a verse was misused to defend slavery, the broader biblical message, which was every person has equal value, corrected that mistake. When relativists complain about injustice, they're secretly using an unchanging rule, like all humans deserve respect. So even they rely on some objective moral standards. To make sense, we need a moral anchor that's bigger than these changing human opinions. When there is no solid, higher standard for right and wrong, people end up making rules by whoever shouts the loudest or whatever trend is most popular. That's why the internet can praise something one week and cancel it the next. Teens feel lost because they don't know which truth to trust, and anxiety and self-harm show up as a result. Fixed moral values like honesty, loyalty, and protecting the weak hold a community together. The Bible says these values come from God, who never changes, therefore is a trustworthy source of truth. If something horrible as genocide is only wrong because most people dislike it, a future crowd could decide it's fine again. But if it is wrong because every human life is sacred, then it is always wrong, no matter the context, no matter the culture, no matter the time, no matter what a majority thinks. Secular systems try to keep words like fair and just and good, but without a deeper foundation. They are only personal opinions to them, so no one is really obliged to follow them. The Bible says everyone is made in God's image, which fueled fights against slavery and human trafficking, and even to this day, still inspires people to serve others. So the bottom line is relativism weakens the very idea it needs to condemn evil, while biblical morality gives a stronger, consistent base for personal behavior and public laws. If objective morality exists, where can it be located? The Christian claim that God has disclosed his character and will in the Bible. Skeptics often regard that assertion as fideistic, but the scriptures invite historical scrutiny. Written by roughly 40 authors across 15 centuries, the Bible nonetheless presents an astonishing thematic unity, centered on creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. More than 5,800 Greek New Testament manuscripts, along with thousands of early translations, enabled textual critics to reconstruct the original wording with over 99% certainty. Along with this, the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls revealed that Isaiah's text, which were copied a millennium earlier than previously known manuscripts, matches the standard Masoretic text, almost verbatim. Such preservation is unparalleled amongst ancient documents. The Bible also predicted real events, such as Isaiah naming King Cyrus long before he was born. It also provides dozens of details about Jesus' life that historians later confirmed. Archaeologists have dug up stones and inscriptions, for example, the Tel Dan stele, that mentions people like King David, showing that these characters weren't just made up and these stories weren't fictional. Not only is the Bible reliable historically, but it is also applicable today, to us, to our world and our society. The Bible's main moral message, love God and love your neighbor, still hasn't changed and has driven good things like hospitals, schools, and human rights. Furthermore, its truth allows us to know that God gave us innate value. The Bible isn't just an old religious book. It has strong evidence behind it and a consistent track record of inspiring, real, lasting good. Nowhere are the consequences of relativism felt more acutely than among digital natives. For Generation Z and Generation Alpha, reality is mediated through screens from infancy. Influencers with millions of likes and followers shape fashion trends, political opinions, and moral sensibilities with a single post or video. Surveys indicate that adolescents trust influencers more than traditional authority figures, including parents, pastors, or even mentors. However, influencer culture is built on curated illusion. Filters erase blemishes. Sponsorships masquerade as authenticity. And algorithms foreground controversy to maximize engagement. The result is an epidemic of comparison, envy, and identity confusion. Because trends change so fast, old markers such as getting married, starting a family, or even serving the community get pushed aside just for the sake of building your brand. Debates over gender show a wider doubt that any category is fixed. A recent law, like Colorado's House bill, let minors choose their own gender identity, even if parents disagree, reinforcing that feelings trump any outside standard. Some parents either turn their children into influencers or include them in their own content to make money, which can mess with kids. It can mess with their empathy and make them feel like they always have to perform. Endless alerts also wreck focus. Homework and deep reading get harder, and anxiety and depression climb as teenagers chase a perfect online image. Ruby Franke could be considered a momfluencer, and I just want to talk about her real quick. At the peak of the 8 Passengers channel, which Ruby and Kevin Franke created on YouTube, they were earning over $100,000 a month from family vlogs, turning everyday life and their children's discipline into content. When kids become income sources, the parent's moral compass can slide from what's best for my child to what keeps the audience engaged. A classic case of relative values shifting with profit and clicks. Ruby curated spotless videos while privately starving her kids and physically abusing them. She would remove beds and give harsh punishments. Some of these she even shared online, but later justified. Digital platforms reward appearance over substance. Truth becomes whatever gardeners likes. This feeds relativism, and viewers are asked to trust the glossy feed rather than the objective child welfare norms. She later partnered with Jody Hildenbrandt, who both believed that extreme abuse was necessary to make the children repent and later be saved. However, they later pled guilty to aggravated child abuse once caught. This shows that with no outside standards, Ruby redefined cruelty as a virtue. Relativism let personal conviction trump universal protections, such as children deserve food and safety. Millions of subscribers reinforced Ruby's message. However, when critics spoke up, she doubled down rather than apologizing. Social media can trap creators in feedback loops where only supportive voices are heard, making their private rulebook feel universally valid. In other words, they cherry pick what they want to hear. Psychologists note that filming children for profit can stunt empathy and tie identity to performance, exactly what happened to Ruby's kids. They were forced to act for the camera until one of them escaped, emaciated, and bound in duct tape. This shows how the digital economy encourages parents to treat kids as brand assets, eroding fixed moral duties to protect and nurture. Ruby Franke's story illustrates relativism breeding moral instability and digital culture magnifying that instability. Once objective norms were replaced by her self-made rules and amplified by attention-driven platform, harm followed rapidly to her kids. This case is a real-world warning that without an anchored moral reference, the digital world can turn parental authority into abuse and children into casualties. Ruby Franke shows what happens when influencer culture and ethical relativism meet. Appearance overrides reality, profit overrides protection, and kids pay the price until society is forced to reinstate objective boundaries. The Bible says your worth comes from being made from God and loved by Him, not from likes or followers. Instead of inventing yourself every day, you can rest in that gift, and you can also focus on loving others. Studies show forgiving and serving, which are key biblical ideas, can cut stress and boost mental health. Families, churches, and schools that lean on these truths can fight this screen sickness with real-life worship, mentors of different ages for different people, and regular unplugged time. In these spaces, your value is measured by love and not by your online stat. Our moment is marked by unprecedented connectivity and equally unprecedented confusion. Ethical relativism promises freedom, but delivers fragmentation, leaving rising generations starved for a stable story in which to locate their lives. The evidence examined above reveals that relativism cannot supply the moral capital it spends, whereas the Bible, which was tested across millennia, corroborated by history, and validated in lived experience, proves a coherent, compassionate, and compelling account of reality. Objective morality, rooted in God's character, safeguards the weak, restrains the powerful, and summons every person to a life of integrity and hope. Restoring moral clarity will require more than individual piety. It will demand cultural architecture that orients hearts and minds towards transcendence. Classical educational models that integrate faith and reason, digital minimalist disciplines that carve out space for silence, and policy frameworks that respect parental rights, while protecting genuine victims are all practical applications of biblical wisdom. The church must also reclaim its prophetic imagination, offering hospitality to the lonely and practical aid to the poor, while courageously and boldly articulating why some paths lead to life and others to despair. Ultimately, the moment is ripe for renewal. The same technologies that magnify relativism can also be harnessed to broadcast beauty and testify to grace. Yet tools alone cannot substitute for a conviction. To paraphrase Chesterton, the Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried. The invitation stands. Step into the difficulty, live the truth, and watch confusion give way to coherence in the light of Christ. May the next generation discover that solid ground they seek has been underneath their feet all along, waiting for them to stand and firmly walk forward with courage and hope and joy. Thank you.
Edgar, thank you so much for putting that together and sharing that. I hear your heart for the troubles that come out of pluralism or just having many different focuses and letting that run the life rather than just simplicity in Christ. And so thank you for that. Yeah. I had thought a while ago about the word pluralism, and you mentioned pluralism. How is ethical relativism and pluralism similar, or are they the same thing?
Pluralism, is talking about the many, variations that there are of beliefs, people, rulers, cultures, and what they believe. And a strong argument that a lot of relativists use is that our pluralistic world, full of different leaders, different values, and different rules, kind of show why relativism should be a thing and why it is currently active in our world. Because due to different countries wanting different rules, and nobody wants to follow the same rules, so that's kind of why relativism falls into pluralism, because it allows pluralism to exist amongst rulers making their rules, laws, and values.
I was thinking a little bit about what you said about instability, and yet one of the things that would hold people together in a common kind of sense of moralism would be condemning evil. It is, and I'm not certain how to phrase this exactly, but is condemning evil, is that part of, do you think that's part of moral relativism?
Not necessarily, because Condemning evil is standing up for God's truth, standing your ground on what He's commanded us to do. A good example could be all the prophets mentioned in the Bible. They would always go up to the king at that time and tell them that they were wrong, that they weren't necessarily following God's commands for them. Again, following God's command to stand up for what is true and what is good and what He has given us to follow. So I wouldn't necessarily say condemning evil is a form of relativism.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad. I just had heard that. One more question. I know in around World War II, part of that was around World War II. It seemed like the world was a little bit more unified in, especially like America against, so before there was kind of a common sense of morality that our country was, felt like there was maybe a common enemy, and in a way that as things have kind of dissipated, it seems like that common enemy maybe doesn't unify us anymore so much. And so I remember reading about the Nuremberg trials where the Muslims and the Nazis kind of came together, and they said, look, we have 5 principles, you have 5 principles, we're the same, we're both against the Jews.